Private Rina Varos never imagined she would be thrust into a world of royalty when she volunteered for a diplomatic mission to Veloria, a distant planet with a mysterious and advanced civilization. Now, standing in the grand hall of the Valorian palace, she stared at a gleaming crown adorned with iridescent gems. Its alien glow reflected the surreal, ethereal light of the palace, and the weight of her unexpected responsibility felt more tangible than ever. The path to this moment began in chaos. Rina's mission had been simple: assist in securing an alliance between Earth and Veloria, whose technological advancements could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. But nothing had gone as planned. A radical Valorian faction, opposed to the alliance, launched a surprise attack, shattering the fragile peace talks. Explosions rocked the capital, throwing both humans and Valorians into panic. Separated from her team in the ensuing chaos, Rina's soldier instincts took over. Smoke filled the grand corridors of the palace as she sprinted toward the sound of distant screams, her pulse blaster ready. Rounding a corner, she found a group of insurgents closing in on a tall, elegant figure, her deep blue skin and glowing silver hair unmistakably marking her as Valorian royalty. Without hesitation, Rina charged. Her military training far outmatched the insurgents' disorganized tactics. In a series of precise shots and swift hand-to-hand combat, she incapacitated the attackers. With the threat neutralized, Rina turned to the figure she had saved. The woman stood tall and regal, her glowing, otherworldly eyes staring into Rina's with a mix of surprise and gratitude. She was Princess Alara, heir to the Valorian throne. Unbeknownst to Rina, saving Alara had set an ancient Valorian law into motion. As the royal guards restored order and the smoke cleared, King Calder, Alara's father, made an announcement that reverberated through both Valorian and human ranks. By the ancient codes, Rina Varos, the human soldier, was now betrothed to Princess Alara and declared crown princess of Veloria. The decision shocked both sides. Earth's government saw it as an opportunity to solidify an alliance, urging Rina to accept her new role, while Valorian factions bristled at the thought of a human ascending to their throne. As soon as Rina assumed her royal duties, assassination attempts followed. She had become a target, not just by those who opposed the alliance, but by those seeking power within Veloria itself. Navigating this dangerous new world was a struggle. Valorian culture was a labyrinth of customs, etiquette, and politics, far from the straightforward life of a soldier. Princess Alara, initially cold and distant, began to see Rina in a different light. Despite her doubts, she couldn't ignore Rina's bravery and determination. Slowly, a cautious friendship began to form between them, though the weight of their impending marriage remained a tense, unspoken barrier. Yet, as Rina immersed herself in Valorian life, she uncovered a far greater conspiracy. The attack on the peace talks was only the beginning of a plot designed to plunge both Veloria and Earth into war. At the center of this web of treachery was General Kaelor, a high-ranking Valorian officer whose ambition threatened the delicate peace between their worlds. Rina's military training and tactical acumen would prove invaluable. She began working with her human liaison, Captain Calder, to gather intelligence on Kaelor's movements. The general had always unnerved Rina during formal functions, his cold gaze and quiet authority hinting at something darker. Now, her suspicions were confirmed. Kaelor was orchestrating a larger scheme that could lead to interstellar conflict. As the conspiracy deepened, so did the danger. During a public ceremony where Rina was introduced to the Valorian people, an assassination attempt nearly succeeded. A hidden explosive device detonated just as Rina took the stage. Reacting on instinct, she ordered the crowd to take cover, her voice cutting through the panic. In the chaos, she shielded a group of civilians from the blast, saving their lives with her quick thinking and courage. The aftermath of the attack found her in the royal infirmary, nursing minor injuries. Princess Alara entered, her glowing hair dimming with concern. "You didn't have to risk yourself like that," she said softly, standing at Rina's bedside. Rina met her gaze, her voice steady. "It's what any soldier would have done." Alara shook her head. "No, it isn't. You're different. Their conversation drifted from pleasantries to deeper matters. For the first time, Ilera opened up about her fears for Veloria's future and her uncertainty about the role Rina would play in it. Rina listened, offering insights from her perspective as both a soldier and an outsider. They were interrupted by the arrival of Commander Lisroantares, leader of Earth's elite special operations team sent to ensure Rina's safety. With Earth now taking a more active role in the alliance, the stakes had been raised even further. As tensions mounted, Rina and her team worked tirelessly to unravel General Kaelor's plan. They employed Earth's military tactics to move undetected through Veloria's capital, gathering evidence of Kaelor's secret dealings. One fateful night, Rina's investigation led her to an abandoned Velorian outpost, where she discovered Kaelor's true aim. He wasn't just trying to disrupt the alliance. He was orchestrating a war that would tear apart both civilizations. Rina knew time was running out. With Veloria's twin moons casting long shadows over the city, she devised a plan to expose Kaelor's conspiracy once and for all. At a grand royal gala, under the guise of celebrating her ascension to royalty, Rina, Ilera, and their allies moved into action. As the crowd of nobles and dignitaries admired the beauty of Veloria's ancient palace, Rina's team infiltrated Kaelor's hidden base. With precise timing and flawless execution, they dismantled his forces and gathered the evidence needed to bring him to justice. The battle wasn't over, but as Rina stood on the balcony overlooking Veloria's vast alien landscape, the weight of the crown resting heavily on her head, she knew that she had taken the first step toward securing peace for both her world and theirs. Rina Varos stood on the balcony, the cool night air of Veloria brushing against her skin as she gazed out over the alien city. The stars twinkled against the dark sky, twin moons casting an eerie glow over the horizon. The crown on her head, still unfamiliar and heavy, caught the moonlight, and the gemstones embedded in it sparkled. But the beauty of the night was lost on her. Her mind churned with thoughts of the conspiracy she had uncovered and the uncertainty that lay ahead. Behind her, the royal palace buzzed with activity. The gala celebrating her ascension to crown princess was still in full swing. Laughter and music drifted through the open doors, but Rina felt like an outsider in this world. The Velorian nobles who mingled inside barely knew her, and though they smiled and bowed, she could sense their unease. She was not one of them, not truly. Footsteps echoed from behind her, and Rina turned to see Princess Ilera approaching. Her silver hair shimmered with a soft, bioluminescent glow that was unique to Velorian royalty. Her eyes, reflecting both moons and stars, locked onto Rina's with an intensity that Rina was still learning to read. "You're avoiding the party," Ilera said, her voice calm but tinged with curiosity. "I'm not much for parties," Rina replied, offering a slight smile. "Too many eyes, too many unknowns." Ilera stepped forward, her gaze sweeping over the city below. "This is your world now, Rina. You'll have to get used to the eyes." Rina's smile faded. "I'm not sure I'll ever get used to it. This world, your world, it's so different. And the enemies here don't fight like the ones I'm used to." Ilera nodded, her face thoughtful. "Velorian politics are a different kind of battlefield. Sometimes the enemy is standing right beside you, wearing a smile." She paused, looking directly at Rina. "But you're not alone. You've proven yourself capable of navigating this world. And you have me." The sincerity in Ilera's words caught Rina off guard. The distance that had once been between them seemed to be shrinking, though Rina couldn't say exactly when it had begun to close. Perhaps it was during their late-night conversations in the aftermath of the assassination attempt, or maybe in the quiet moments between royal duties. Whatever the cause, a tentative bond had formed between them, though it was still fragile. Before Rina could respond, the door to the balcony opened again, and Captain Arya Calder stepped through, her face tight with urgency. "Your Highness," Calder said, addressing Rina formally, "we've received word from Commander Antares. There's been movement. Kaelor's forces are regrouping, and there's intel suggesting a new plan is already in motion." Rina's pulse quickened. "What kind of plan?" Calder's voice lowered as she stepped closer. "An internal attack. He's targeting the palace. Tonight, Rina's stomach turned, the weight of the situation crashing over her. She glanced at Alara, who had gone pale. The palace, filled with Veloria's most important figures, was about to become a war zone. "We need to evacuate the guests immediately," Rina said, her mind already racing through scenarios. "We can't let them be sitting targets." Calder shook her head. "If we start an evacuation now, Kaelor's forces will know we're onto them. We'll lose the element of surprise. We need to neutralize the threat quietly." Valeris stepped forward, her expression hardening. "I know the palace better than anyone. There are hidden passageways, places Kaelor's people could use to infiltrate. We can use those same routes to move unnoticed." Rina nodded, her admiration for Alara growing. The princess was no stranger to strategy. "Then let's move." Calder, alert Commander Antares, and her team. "We'll need our operatives ready for combat." As they made their way back inside the palace, Rina's heart pounded with the tension of the moment. The music and laughter around them felt surreal, disconnected from the danger lurking in the shadows. She and Alara slipped through the crowd, unnoticed for the most part, while Calder disappeared to make contact with Antares. They reached a secluded corner of the palace, where Alara pressed a hidden panel in the wall. A door slid open, revealing a narrow passageway that wound deep into the palace's ancient foundations. Rina followed Alara inside, the air cool and damp as they descended into the hidden heart of the palace. "These tunnels were built centuries ago," Alara explained as they moved swiftly through the passageways. "Valorian royalty used them to escape during times of war, but they've been largely forgotten." Rina couldn't help but admire the foresight of the Valorians. "Do Kaelor's forces know about them?" "Unlikely," Valeris said. "Only a select few have knowledge of the full extent of these tunnels. But we can't take any chances." As they moved deeper into the passageway, Rina's mind flicked through potential strategies. They needed to get ahead of Kaelor's forces, trap them before they reached the gala. But the question lingered. How far had Kaelor's conspiracy spread? Could there be traitors within the palace walls? They reached a chamber where the passage split into multiple routes. Rina crouched down, her military training kicking in as she studied the area. "We'll need to split up. Alara, you take the northern passage and secure the central guard posts. If Kaelor's forces get past them, we're in trouble. I'll take the southern route and try to intercept any of his infiltrators." Alara's gaze lingered on Rina for a moment, concern flashing in her eyes. "Be careful, Rina." Rina gave her a brief, reassuring nod. "You too." Without another word, they split off into the darkness. The southern passage was narrow, the walls closing in around Rina as she moved swiftly but cautiously. Her pulse blaster was ready, and every sound, every shift in the air, put her on edge. This was a different kind of battle, one fought in the shadows, where trust was a rare commodity. Suddenly, the faint sound of footsteps echoed from up ahead. Rina pressed herself against the wall, her breath steady as she listened. The footsteps grew louder. She crouched low, her eyes scanning the dimly lit tunnel for any sign of movement. A shadow appeared at the far end of the passage. Rina's grip tightened on her blaster. It was time to see just how deep Kaelor's treachery ran. As the figure approached, she stepped into the open, her weapon raised. "Stop right there." The figure froze, their face half hidden in the shadows. Rina's heart skipped a beat as recognition dawned. It wasn't an enemy. It was one of the palace guards, someone she had seen just hours ago, laughing with the other guests. And they had a blaster pointed directly at her. The enemy wasn't just outside the palace walls. It had been inside all along. Rina's heart thundered in her chest as the palace guard's blaster gleamed ominously in the dim tunnel. His face was twisted in hesitation, but his hand remained steady, aimed directly at her. "Lower your weapon," Rina ordered, her voice calm but sharp. Her pulse blaster remained trained on him, her eyes scanning every flicker of his movements. "This is your last warning." The guard hesitated, his eyes darting between her and the shadows of the passage. Rina could see the internal struggle etched on his face, a loyal servant torn between duty and treachery. But there was something else there too, a flash of desperation. "Princess," The guard said in a low, shaky voice. "You don't understand. Kaelor's people, they're already here. Inside the palace. They have." Before he could finish, a sudden crack echoed through the tunnel, and the guard's body jerked violently. A flash of crimson burst from his chest, and he collapsed to the ground in front of her, lifeless. Rina barely had time to react, ducking just as another energy bolt sizzled past her, burning the air where she had stood. "Damn it!" Rina hissed, diving behind a narrow alcove in the wall as a second blast ricocheted off the stone beside her. From her cover, she peered out cautiously, her pulse racing. The tunnel was too narrow for her to see where the shots had come from, but the faint echo of footsteps in the distance told her enough. Kaelor's forces were moving fast, and they were closer than anyone had anticipated. Her mind spun as she tried to process the gravity of the situation. They're already here. The palace was crawling with traitors, and if they had gotten this deep into the royal tunnels, then the attack on the gala could begin at any moment. Rina tapped her communicator, keeping her voice low. "Ilera, this is Rina. The palace guard's compromised. Kaelor's forces are inside. Repeat, they're already inside. We have to act now." A brief pause crackled over the line before Ilera's voice responded, calm but tense. "I've reached the central guard post. We're holding the line, but you're right. We're seeing unusual movements. Stay safe. We'll do what we can here." Rina exhaled sharply. Every second counted. She glanced at the body of the guard, regret pulling at her, but there was no time to mourn the fallen. Not yet. Pressing forward with calculated speed, Rina slipped into the shadows of the tunnel, moving silently toward the origin of the attack. Her ears strained to pick up any more sounds, footsteps, whispers, the hum of a power cell. Every corner she turned felt like stepping into the unknown, but her instincts were sharp, her senses honed. The passage widened ahead, opening into a larger chamber lit by dim, glowing orbs embedded in the walls. Rina pressed herself against the wall, edging forward. As her eyes adjusted to the low light, she spotted them, 3 figures dressed in dark cloaks, crouched near a power relay junction. Their weapons were slung over their shoulders, and one of them was fiddling with a device attached to the relay. Saboteurs. They hadn't noticed her yet, too focused on their task. The device they were working on pulsed with a faint blue light, its screen flashing with Valorian script. Whatever they were doing, it wasn't good. Rina's pulse blaster hummed softly as she prepared for the strike. She knew she had the advantage of surprise, but there were 3 of them. Taking them down swiftly would require precision. She inhaled deeply, steadying herself. One shot, one move at a time. In a flash, she sprang from her position, firing a single shot toward the first figure. The blast hit true, striking the saboteur in the back. They crumpled to the ground without a sound. The other 2 whirled around, eyes wide with alarm, but Rina was already moving. She darted to the left, a second shot ringing out before the saboteurs could react. Another figure dropped, but the last one managed to fire a shot in her direction, forcing her to dive for cover. Her heart hammered in her chest as she rolled behind a large pillar. The final saboteur was frantically shouting into a communication device now, calling for backup. Rina's mind raced. If reinforcements arrive, we're done for. Without hesitating, she leaned out from her cover, aiming carefully at the saboteur's comm device. With a single well-placed shot, she blasted it to pieces, leaving the attacker momentarily stunned. The brief distraction was all she needed. Rina charged forward, closing the distance between them in seconds. Before the saboteur could raise his weapon again, she struck, disarming him with a swift kick and slamming him into the wall. The force of the impact knocked the wind out of him, and he collapsed to the ground, dazed but alive. Panting, Rina knelt down and quickly disabled the device they had been working on. The pulsing blue light faded, and the power relay resumed its normal function. Whatever sabotage they had planned had been thwarted, at least for now. Rina grabbed the stunned saboteur by the collar and dragged him into the light. His face was bruised and bloodied, but she needed answers. "Who sent you?" she demanded, her voice low and dangerous. The saboteur groaned, barely able to open his eyes. "You think you've stopped us?" He spat weakly, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. This is only the beginning. Kaylee's already won. Rina's eyes narrowed. Where is he? What's the plan? The man only chuckled weakly. You can't stop him. He's already inside the palace. And by the time you figure it out, he coughed, spitting blood. The Velorian crown will belong to Kaelor. Rina felt a chill run down her spine. She had stopped this sabotage, but it was just one of many. Kaelor had planned for everything. And now, time was running out. Without another word, she knocked the saboteur unconscious, securing him to a nearby column with restraints she had brought. She activated her communicator once more. Alara, Calder, listen carefully. Kaelor is already inside the palace, and this was just a diversion. I'm heading back to the gala now. Alara's voice came through, sharp and urgent. Understood. We'll secure the northern gates and check the perimeter. Be careful, Rina. Rina didn't need to be told twice. She was already moving, racing back through the tunnels, her thoughts a blur. Kaelor's forces were moving faster than expected, and now the very heart of the palace was in danger. As she approached the surface, a distant explosion rocked the tunnel, and Rina's blood ran cold. The attack had begun. With renewed determination, she surged forward, knowing that whatever awaited her above, she couldn't let Kaelor win. The fate of Veloria, and perhaps the galaxy itself, hung in the balance. Rina burst through the hidden door into the palace corridors, just as the faint tremors of the distant explosion echoed through the stone walls. The palace's once serene atmosphere had shifted into chaos, with guards rushing past in a flurry of movement, their bioluminescent armor flickering as they called out orders. The attack was well underway, and Kaelor's forces were striking hard and fast. Her communicator buzzed in her ear as Alara's voice came through, crackling with tension. Rina, we've secured the northern gates, but there's heavy fighting near the throne room. They're trying to breach the central chamber, the throne room, where Queen Valeris and the council were still convened. The heart of Veloria's leadership. Rina's stomach tightened, but she pushed the fear aside. There was no time to hesitate. I'm heading there now. Don't let them get past the gates, Alara. Whatever it takes. Understood, Alara replied, her voice steely. Rina sprinted down the corridor, her pulse blaster still warm from the earlier firefight. Her mind raced. If Kaelor had infiltrated the palace this deeply, then the gala had been nothing but a smokescreen for his true target, the throne. His ultimate goal had always been to seize control of Veloria from within, using treachery and violence to break the royal family's centuries-old hold. The palace's intricate halls twisted and turned, each one bathed in the faint glow of the bioluminescent energy coursing through the walls. Rina could feel the tension building in the air, the weight of the coming battle pressing down on her shoulders like a suffocating force. As she rounded the corner leading to the throne room's grand entrance, her breath caught in her throat. The corridor was filled with smoke, the air thick with the scent of burning plasma. A line of palace guards lay slumped against the walls, some still clutching their weapons, others motionless. And there, at the far end of the hall, the massive doors to the throne room were wide open. A sense of dread washed over Rina, but she forced herself to move forward, creeping closer to the doors, her blaster raised and ready. She could hear voices inside, low, murmured conversations, broken only by the occasional thrum of energy weapons. Steeling herself, Rina peeked through the gap between the doors. Inside the throne room, chaos reigned. Kaelor's forces had already breached the inner sanctum. Dozens of dark-clad insurgents swarmed the room, their weapons drawn and aimed at the royal council members huddled together near the back of the chamber. Queen Valeris stood at the forefront, her expression fierce despite the danger that surrounded her. Her bioluminescent skin glowed brightly, a symbol of Velorian strength and resolve. Yet even from this distance, Rina could see the tension in her eyes. And in the center of it all, standing atop the raised platform where the throne resided, was Kaelor. The traitorous general's presence was unmistakable, tall, imposing, with his once proud Velorian armor now stripped of its royal insignia, replaced with dark, gleaming metal that pulsed with an unnatural energy. His eyes, glowing faintly with a malicious light, surveyed the room with cold satisfaction. He had already won the throne. Or so he thought. Rina's heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. She needed a plan, and fast. Charging in recklessly would only get her killed, and there were too many of Kaelor's men to take on alone. She scanned the room quickly, her eyes locking on the ornate chandelier hanging above the platform. It was heavy, massive even. If she could bring it down, it might give the queen and her council a chance to escape. But to do so, she'd have to act quickly and take out the insurgents guarding the exits. A deep breath. Focus. Rina slipped into the room, using the chaos to her advantage. The insurgents were focused on their prisoners, their attention divided. She moved silently, staying close to the walls, her eyes locked on her first target. A guard stationed near the side entrance, his weapon drawn but his back turned. With swift precision, Rina struck. Her pulse blaster hummed quietly as she fired a single shot into the back of the insurgent's neck. He dropped instantly, collapsing into the shadows without a sound. One down. More to go. She continued her silent assault, moving from shadow to shadow, taking down each insurgent one by one. Every shot was precise, every movement calculated. But with each kill, Rina could feel the urgency mounting. Kaelor's voice boomed through the chamber now, his words laced with venom as he addressed the queen. "You've ruled for too long, Valeris," Kaelor snarled, stepping down from the throne and advancing toward her. "Your reign is over. The galaxy will bow to a new order, an order built on power, not ancient bloodlines." The queen stood her ground, her gaze unflinching. "Veloria will never bow to you, Kaelor. You are a traitor, and the people will see you for what you truly are." Kaelor laughed, a cruel sound that echoed through the chamber. "By the time they realize, it will be too late." Rina clenched her jaw, her eyes darting back to the chandelier. She was almost in position, just a few more steps. But then something unexpected happened. From the shadows near the throne, a figure stepped forward, tall, regal, and unmistakably familiar. Calder. Rina's heart skipped a beat as her brother walked into the light, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. His expression was calm, almost serene, as if he had known this moment was coming all along. "Calder?" Queen Valeris breathed, her eyes widening in shock. "What are you doing?" Kaelor's grin widened. "Ah, your precious commander." He looked to Calder with an almost mocking respect. "At last, the truth is revealed. Tell them, Calder. Tell them why you've come." Calder glanced at the queen, then at Rina, though his eyes lingered on her for only a moment, a fleeting connection before he spoke. "I'm sorry, my queen," he said quietly, his voice filled with a strange mixture of regret and resolve. "But the council's ways are no longer enough. Kaelor offers us a future." Rina's blood ran cold. "No, this couldn't be happening. Not Calder." Kaelor chuckled, gesturing to Calder. "You see, princess? Even your most trusted commander sees the truth. Valoria's future lies with me." Rina's mind raced, the weight of her brother's betrayal threatening to crush her. But she couldn't afford to dwell on it now. The mission hadn't changed. She still had to act, still had to stop Kaelor. One more step. She moved into position, her pulse blaster trained on the chandelier's support beam. She fired, the energy bolt striking the beam and sending cracks splintering through the metal. The chandelier shuddered, groaning under its own weight, before it plummeted toward the ground with a deafening crash. The room exploded into chaos as debris rained down, and in the confusion, Rina charged forward. Kaelor's men scrambled to regain control, but Rina was faster. She fired at the nearest insurgent, then another, clearing a path toward the queen. "Go!" Rina shouted to Valeris, rushing to her side. "We need to get you out of here." The queen hesitated for only a moment before nodding, her regal composure never faltering. Together, they sprinted toward the side exit, Rina covering their escape with rapid, precise shots. But as they neared the doorway, Rina felt a sudden, sharp pain in her side, a blaster shot. She stumbled, the impact sending her crashing to the floor. Through her haze of pain, she saw him, Calder, standing over her, his blaster still smoking. "I'm sorry, Rina," he whispered. Darkness began to close in around her, but Rina fought to stay conscious, her hand grasping for her weapon even as her strength began to fade. She couldn't let it end like this. Not here. Not now. With the last of her strength, she lifted her blaster and fired one final shot. The world went black.